Beloved, today we step into one of the most distorted, weaponized, and misunderstood teachings in all of Christianity. And that teaching is sin. This single idea shaped the world for over 2,000 years. It shaped how we see ourselves, how we see God, how we relate to our bodies, our desires, our mistakes, and our humanity. And often it is so violently. But when we turn to the Gospel of Mary, we hear something radically different, something compassionate, something liberating. Mary tells us plainly, there is no sin. Did you hear that? There is no sin. There is only ignorance. Not ignorance as in stupidity, but ignorance as in forgetting who you truly are. This is not a moral rebellion. This is not permission to harm. This is spiritual psychology. Mary's not saying do whatever you want. She's saying you cannot be separate from God. You can only forget that you are separate from God. And that's what we call shadow. It's simply the place where forgetting has not taken root. The shadow is not evil. It is unhealed love. The church taught us that the shadow is where the evil lives, where temptation awaits, where demons lurk. They labeled it evil and things that'll get you into hell, and conjured all of these awful visions of what hell would be. So if you feed into your shadow, that that's terrible. You're allowing that evil into your life. But the shadow is not evil. The shadow is part of you that was rejected. It's been shamed, it's been wounded, it's misunderstood. Shamed, wounded, misunderstood. It's the emotion you are never safe to feel, the truth you were told not to speak, the version of you that someone decided was unacceptable. Shadow isn't your darkness. Shadow is your light that was exiled. And here's the truth Mary embodied and lived. When you turn towards your shadow with love instead of fear, it transforms into wisdom. It's the old saying, the cliches are so true, but it is like every mistake you make, there are such things as mistakes because you will learn from them. That's basically what it's saying. The shadows are not mistakes. They are things that are there to teach you a lesson. So avoiding the pain of looking at those shadows, it prolongs it. And this is the job of the ego, to protect you from feeling that pain. And in doing so, it can cause more pain and confusion because you haven't dealt with that issue yet. So you may be reacting from a place of a hurt young child who was told not to do something because it irritated the adults. And later on in life, you're doing something. Your ego wants to avoid that situation from happening again so badly that it will create some other diversionary tactic. And so you will not understand why you're always repeating the same habit over and over again. But if you can make the correlation between the action that you keep doing and the situation that you're in when that action comes up, you can tie it back to a childhood, most likely can tie it back to a childhood event. So that ego is still sort of living from that childhood event that took place that was so hurtful to you, and it's trying to avoid you ever dealing with that again. So it creates the diversionary tactic. And the diversionary tactic is the way that we realize we're not dealing with this shadow. And we're going to continue to have that diversionary tactic until we do deal with the shadow. So shadow work comes in, and that's a lot of people want to avoid the shadow work because it can be painful. I mean, you're going back and looking at things that happen in your childhood that your ego believes are too painful to look at now. But it's another cliche, it's facing your fears. So you have to face that fear, relive that experience in some sort of way, and look at it from a different perspective. From the perspective of you're an adult now, you've had much more life experience. You can look at the situation where your parents yelled at you for doing something, singing out loud. And as an adult, now you won't sing out loud because you're afraid of being judged. Now you can look at the situation of when you were a child that your parents yelled at you, and you can say, "Oh, I get it. They were just yelling because, mom and dad had a tough day and they need some peace and quiet, and they didn't realize how hurtful it was that they said this to me, and it's affecting me now through my whole life." Once you do that, it's like mind blowing because you realize you have spent the past, however old you are, 30, 40, 50 years reacting to an event that happened as a child, and you're reacting to it now in kind of an in almost an irrational kind of way. Hope that makes sense. I don't know. When you realize this, you can stop, think, and ask, am I coming from a place of love or fear? So, love or fear, someone once said to me, and I don't think she knew how powerful it really was, but it absolutely changed the way I look at everything. She said, everything, every reaction that we have, it's either coming from a place of love or fear. And so once I realized that, I started to sit with every situation. If my husband and I had an argument, I would sit with it and say, my reaction to what he said, is that coming from a place of love or a place of fear? And my tactic that I would do would sit down. If I didn't immediately know the answer, it was usually fear, because love you usually know right away. But it also helps to get to the bottom of that. So I would write down, I use a tactic of the 7 whys. So I'm going to say, for instance, we fought over the remote control. That's not a thing in my house, but I think it's a thing for some people. We fought over the remote control. And I have to say, well, is this coming from love or fear? Like maybe I said some nasty things, you always control everything. Is that coming from love or fear? So I would ask myself, why did you act like such and such? Why did you act crazy? Why did you act out during this incident? And I would look at it and then I would answer it and say, because I was angry. And then you say the next question, well, why were you angry? I was angry because my husband snatched the remote out of my hands. Why did that upset you? Because I felt like a child. Oh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Why did you feel like a child? Because when I was younger, my sibling used to pull the remote out of my hands all the time. And why did that bother you? Well, because my parents always took his side. Oh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. So, how did that make you feel? Well, that made me feel really sad. That made me feel unloved. And then you say, "Oh, okay. Where is this coming from?" And you can narrow it down until you see the sign. You can keep going and going. It will appear, And you will have that aha moment and say, oh, I get it now. I have to go back and deal with those times that my brother used to steal the remote and my parents used to take his side. And you go into your memories and you recall that and you picture it with a different outcome. And you also have to tell your inner child it's okay that you have dealt with that and that you felt it, but you are safe now and you're going to move on. Now, I'm not going to say that that is easy to do or easy to stick. You will have to do it continually to remind yourself, but the goal is that eventually, every time that situation where your husband steals the remote comes up, instead of triggering your ego, to react from a place of hurt, fear, whatever it is, you will stop and start to say, oh, he took the remote again. How am I going to act now? Am I going to act the same way I did before, or am I going to choose love over fear? It's really, once you kind of do it a couple of times, it almost becomes a little bit of a mind game. So you're walking around like trying to avoid the landmines, but you definitely learn from it. So just getting back to this, if it's love, then you continue. If the answer is fear, try to examine the root cause, addressing the time your father yelled at you to stop singing. And now you never sing out loud because you're afraid of judgment. Once you can witness the origin, the pain dissolves it. Compassion is the alchemy. This is the heart of the Magdalene path. Why the church feared shadow work. So, why did the church demonize the shadow? Why did it invent sin as a category at all? Because once you understand that your shadow is simply a call for love, healing, and integration, you no longer need an external authority to tell you who you are. You no longer need to fear punishment. You no longer outsource your conscience. You become sovereign. Shadow work removes the need for confession booths, intermediaries, and moral policing. And sovereignty is always threatening to systems built on fear. Mary taught the opposite of sin. She taught self-responsibility without shame, self-awareness without hierarchy. She taught that everything we judge in ourselves is simply a part of us waiting to be seen, held, understood, and brought home. The shadow as a portal to awakening. Every time you face something uncomfortable inside of yourself, fear, anger, jealousy, grief, numbness, insecurity, judgment, you are not meeting sin. You are meeting a forgotten part of your soul. The shadow whispers, I protected you once. Now I'm ready to be transformed. Shadow is not a danger. It's a doorway. The mystics believed the very places we reject within ourselves are the exact places where God is waiting. This is why Mary was able to rise. She did not fear her humanity. She did not exile her wounds. She met them with presence, and every wound she faced became a portal for light. The Magdalene insight was when Mary says, where there is no sin, there is no need for forgiveness. She's really saying, stop condemning yourself. There's nothing in you that needs punishment. There is only what needs remembering. Shadow work is not about fixing yourself. It is about loving the parts of you that never felt loved. It is about returning to the truth beneath the fear. You were never broken. You were only separated from your light. And when you meet your inner darkness with compassion, the divine meets you there, without judgment, without conditions, without fear. This is the path of liberation. Let's do a short ritual and reflection now. I want to invite you into a small act of remembrance. Take a piece of paper and write down one fear, one wound, one self-judgment you've been carrying. Hold that paper against your heart for a moment. Acknowledge how hard it has been to carry it. And when you're ready, burn it safely, or bury it in the earth, or flush it down the toilet. I release the lie that I am broken. Whisper this as you rid yourself of this pain. I release the lie that I am broken. Afterwards, in your journal, write, what part of me has been calling for my attention? What am I ready to see with compassion instead of fear? And let's just move on to a meditation here to help us ground in, embracing the shadow with light. It's just going to be a few moments here. Now close your eyes. Bring your awareness to your chest. And imagine a soft, warm light there. Not bright, not harsh, just gentle. Now imagine holding your shadow, whatever arose for you today, in that light, the way you would hold a frightened child. You are not fixing, you are not forcing, you are not judging. You are simply witnessing with love. Feel the shadow soften. Feel it melt. Feel it return home. This is alchemy. This is healing. This is remembrance. Wiggle your toes. It's just you moving your body and coming back into the space. This is a practice you can return to over and over to find what shadows may be hiding on for you.